two major announcements takes place today. One dealing with Vice President J.D. Vance. What he just said, it actually stunned China, stunned the world. Because when everybody was pushing that these tariffs are not working, some big news came out. Also, we're going to talk about what RFK just said for HHS, what he is banning. This is the step of making healthier options for food. I challenge you all the time to grow food, but what if you can't? Well, we need to depend on people growing food and also businesses giving us food at the grocery store. We want to make sure it's healthy. We're going to talk about something he just banned. Also, we're going to discuss the Middle East, not dealing with Israel. The thing is this, when everybody wants to tell you that Israel's the wrong one and Hamas is doing great things, well, truth be told, Hamas is going broke. And Egypt and Qatar, who does not actually represent anything that we would truly support, is at the White House today speaking with President Trump. But not only that, they're trying to build a ceasefire that basically states that Hamas has got to lay down weapons. And also, lastly, we're going to talk about school systems. You got to get your kids out of these school systems. If you cannot leave the school system, then you have got to try to reform it. If not, learn how to co-op. Learn how to build your own academy or own little school system. It's possible. We're going to discuss that today. Let's dive into these and a few more stories, and we'll talk about a little bit about where I'm at. Let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome to our channel. Thank you so very much for being here today. It is a rainy, nasty day, and typically I'd say in South Mississippi, but we're actually at a tree house. Me and Misty decided to just take a day and be together, so we came to North Alabama to a tree house, and we'll share a link to this place. This place is absolutely beautiful, and right now it's raining, and we're enjoying this. We'll talk a little bit more about it in the vlog, so check out my vlog if you want to know more about this beautiful location. We're literally sitting in the woods around nobody. It's actually been really nice. But on to the stories of the day, and hopefully the rain will not be too loud. First, let's talk about the school system. When I always tell you to get your kids out of school, I believe that. I believe that we homeschool. I believe in it. Let me tell you a few people around here what they did in Mississippi. If they could not homeschool, if their parents had to work, understandable, we get that. They started building co-ops. And so what they did is they would find a retired teacher or find someone who was willing to homeschool, and they would actually put 5 or 6 kids under their leadership. Same way with little private education schools where they would all kind of chip in together, pay the teacher together, and she would teach them everything they needed to know about a curriculum such as a homeschool curriculum. Now, why do I push those kind of things? Well, prime example, let's talk about what's happening in Maryland. And this is where I go back and say this too. You're not safe even in these conservative states. Like, if you know, my son just went to a senior prom with his girlfriend. And to be honest with you, they probably will get married. They've been together for a long time. But just seeing some of the dangers, even at that, like I'm glad my son is 17, but I was thinking I would never want my other kids in this or my younger kids in this because of some of the profane music, some of just the fact that teachers were not actually getting on to kids for doing things they shouldn't have been doing, even at this little prom dance. And so when I say conservative states are not even taken care of even really anymore, it's the same thing. They're not. Now, liberal states are even worse because they're trying to proactively indoctrinate your children. Let's go to Maryland and see what they're actually doing. It says these parents remove their kids from the school, and here's why. The Supreme Court is hearing this case. This is from Epoch Times. It says an interfaith group of parents saying forcing elementary students to participate in instruction dealing with a non-belief in religion, but also a belief in changing one's gender or changing one's belief in how they feel about their morals and values violates their First Amendment rights. Now, we're talking about a group of people who are made up of not only Christians, made up of other religious organizations that are saying, look, we don't want our kids indoctrinated with this stuff. They would not allow the parents to opt out of this very profane filth talk that you would traditionally have as an adult. Maybe not even an adult, maybe just with your spouse. Literally, the kind of things that they're talking about is dealing with objects and dealing with changing roles and genders. I mean, this kind of stuff is not what we should be pushing on our children. I mean, this is not really a conversation even for adults because it's kind of asinine. It really doesn't make sense when you're actually using some kind of, part of your brain to say that this is okay to change roles and things like that. Actually, Mississippi Supreme Court stood up against this with a child the other day, so I'm glad to see a conservative state doing something about it. But the thing is, if we allow that these school systems can make your children go through some very, very profane studies and indoctrinate them with liberal ideology without you as a parent being able to opt out, that's a big deal. You know what? They were not even going to tell the parents. Luckily, a parent got wind of it, and so that's actually what started this conversation. So what if your kids are going to school and you have no idea what they're learning? What if your kids are going to school and instead of getting taught faith and values like you try to teach them at night or on the weekends or at church, they're getting fed all this 40 to 50 hours a week and being indoctrinated saying, look, your parents' beliefs are kind of crazy. Keep it from them, but this is the way that most people believe. This is how colleges believe. This is how most America believes. And so they get indoctrinated. Why do you think it's such a big deal to be trans now? It's actually went up from like 2 or 3% to like 15 to 20%. Why? Because kids are being taught that this is normal. And remember, without the parents' knowledge, they were teaching your children this. What we don't realize is when we turn our kids over to the public school system, you're turning them over to the government. And when you turn them over to the government, whatever they choose to teach, they get to teach them without your knowledge. So, my push. Homeschool your children. If you cannot homeschool your children, get together with some friends and with some like-minded people, maybe a church, and start building a way to have a co-op. It is possible, and most states allow it. If your state does not allow it, and you're in these liberal states, please, for your children's sake, get out of these states. Because ultimately, like Maryland, they're telling the parents, you have no rights, and us as the school system know how to raise your children better. Now let's go on to the next story with J.D. Vance. It says, J.D. Vance just announced to Americans that India and United States have officially signed negotiations of trade. Looking at India's economic forecast report, this is a game changer for America. With India's 1.4 billion people and $3.4 trillion economy, we're talking about $130 to $180 billion worth of U.S. exports. This means it could give 500 to 1 million new jobs in America to send our goods over to India. It says from 1.2 billion in agriculture to 10 to 20 billion in defense, this deal will tap directly into India's massive market and directly counters China's influence. Now, why is this a big deal? China came out 2 days ago and issued a stern warning to anyone who was changing and exchanging and trading with America that they would be doomed. Now, the biggest other economy in the Indo-Pacific area is India. And they just literally spat in the face of China and say, you know what, who cares what you say, we're going to do business with America. And this is going to add hundreds of billions of dollars to each economy and upwards of 500,000 to 1 million new jobs in America because of manufacturing. That is a game changer. And this is J.D. Vance. People don't give him credit. J.D. Vance is making all this take place. He's the one meeting for Trump in aspirations to say this is what we need to do to have a better trade partner and also have balanced trade. Now, are we going to always be now, is it okay that we have a little deficit on our trade? Absolutely, because we're the ones that hold the world's currency. But it should not be so upside down like it is with China and some of these other countries. And India is just a new way of tapping this resource. And actually, India and China don't get along too well. They both benefit off each other. But I think once China put out that warning, saying if anybody is willing to go and do trade with America, we're gonna hold your feet to the fire, basically. So India was like, screw that, we're going. And so this deal is going to make for billions of dollars and up to 500 to 1 million new jobs in America. I mean, look at this, another monster announcement. Pharmaceutical company Roche is to invest $50 billion in the United States. Again, not that I'm for prescriptions, but if we're talking about being sustainable and having dependency or independency on just American companies, this is a game changer. Eli Lilly did the same thing. Now Roche, they're saying we're going to produce, not only just distribute the pharmaceuticals here, we're actually going to start making the pharmaceuticals here. One thing 2020 did show is that we were not prepared for anything like that. And so therefore, if we're going to be prepared, and what I tell you all the time about having emergency preparedness medicine, having foods, having things that we need, having monies, because on our small scale, we need to be ready. Well, I think what Trump is doing is he's saying, look, on the big scale, we're going to do the same thing. And we're going to make sure that we're completely independent on energy, AI, and even in pharmaceuticals. That's what these trade tariffs have been about. It's not been about, oh, well, we're just want to, make the world mad at us. No, it's to bring them to the negotiation table and look at the difference it's made with some of these big monster companies. We see automotive, such as BMW, Toyota, and a lot of other industries saying that they're going to invest in America now. There was a Volvo dealership or a Volkswagen dealership in Mexico. Now they've shuttered it and they're going to put that here in America. That's a big deal. Eli Lilly, Roche, again with pharmaceuticals, big deal. Now counting the chips and the AI talks with NVIDIA and some of these other companies, those are making monster inroads into making America truly great again, and not only that, sustainable again. And then Trump came out and said, if we want AI to be what AI could be here, which again, I'm not for AI, but we do know it's coming. He's saying we have to fulfill our grid needs. So he's talking about more energy independence. And so therefore, if we're wanting to have AI, if we're wanting to have super intelligence, the only way that's going to happen is with more energy. That means we're going to start digging up the earth and start getting to the rare earth minerals. But not only that, we're going to start pumping fuel again. He said his goal is to be completely energy independent once again. And if we do that and we start building new technology, then we depend on nothing from other countries. These are the kind of things that we should want to hear from our leaders. All the while, the Democrats are literally flying to El Salvador to try to get this MS-13 gang member out. It's funny, if you go back and look at the tweet by Chris Van Hollen back in 2017, go back and look at it. Chris Van Hollen, who is just promoted to go get this MS-13 gang member out, he literally stated in a tweet back in 2017 that's still up on his page, he said this, "Look, President," he was talking to President Trump at that time, Trump 1.0, "look, don't worry about the illegal immigrants. Let's just worry about the gangbangers. Let's get this MS-13 gangs out of America." And now all of a sudden, he's going down to fly on taxpayer dollars to get the MS-13 gang members back here. And our judicial system is backing him. So let's talk about actually who's benefiting America. The people that are wanting to bring back manufacturing jobs and to make better trade for you, and literally farming. Farming is how we make money. This is how we feed America. And India is wanting to invest in our agriculture. That's huge, especially because guess what? They only have non-GMO crops there. They don't take any kind of fertilized crops, herbicided crops, or pesticide crops. So if all of a sudden they're wanting to buy more from us, that means we may have more non-GMO crops here too, which is a game changer for also our health. Now another story, Egyptian and Qatar propose a ceasefire proposal for Israel and Gaza. Now here's the benefit. They literally throw complete and utter shade on Hamas right here. They're saying, look, if y'all learn to just ceasefire, if you learn to put your weapons down, we'll see if Israel can go to the table and just give you some of your land back. They never talked about Israel's being the problem here. They're actually talking about the fact that Gaza and their election of Hamas is the problem. And I love this because Qatar absolutely hates America and hates everything we stand for and hates Israel. But guess what? What we don't realize behind the scenes is Trump is expected to meet with Qatar Prime Minister today. Trump effect. Qatar literally is one of the ones that are sponsoring all this to take place, along with Iran. So now that Qatar is coming to the table with Egypt saying, look, we want to build a ceasefire in this area because we don't want these people either. We want these people to stay right where they're at. The Palestinians and Gaza stay right where they're at. But the only way to do that is to get rid of Hamas and tell them to lay their arms down. So what I think they're showing in this one agreement is that Israel's not at fault. When the world wants to blame Israel, actually what these Middle Eastern countries are saying, look, we don't want these people. Let's try to find out a way to give them their land back. But the only way to give their land back is we've got to tell Hamas to quit trying to bomb everybody. Quit trying to shoot Israel. Or they're going to end up owning your land. And then guess what? We have to take all these people. So I think what this is they're trying to make it look like, well, it's a good thing. It's Israel's fault. We're trying to get to the table with Israel. But actually, when you go into the negotiation, they're literally showing that we don't want these people in our lands. They're keeping them blocked off. Isn't that funny how, the media and the Democrats are saying it's all Israel's fault. Egypt is saying they don't want the Gazans and the Palestinians in there. And so therefore, they're building this ceasefire. And they're trying to say, look, Hamas, the only way to stop this is you lay your weapons down. You come to the ceasefire table, not Israel. All right, the rain is getting heavy, so hopefully you can still hear this. We're going to go with one more story right quick. HHS Secretary Kennedy unveils a new plan to get rid of synthetic dyes and petroleum-based bad things in our food system. He says we are ate up with it. It says RFK says Tuesday he will announce that there will be details to remove all petroleum-based synthetic dyes from the food system. When you start looking at FDA has approved 36 of this food dyes that are made by petroleum-based byproducts to be in your food, such as candy, cereal, and soda, things that are commonly given to children. Red number 3, blue number 1, green number 3. All of those things we're trying to get rid of because FDA should have never approved them. This is where I go back and say a lot of these things the FDA approved, a lot of them doesn't mean they're good for you. It means that the pharmaceutical boards and the pesticide boards and all them were sitting on these committees. And the FDA just let these things bypass through because of lobbyists and special interests. Well, RFK is saying, look, we're not doing it anymore. States including Iowa, Louisiana, Massachusetts, and West Virginia have made state levels to get these dyes out of food. But now Kennedy is wanting to get 8 commonly used food dyes out by 2026. He said if we don't, then we're going to keep on looking at very sick people and us dependent on garbage food. It's time to make America healthy again. Now that's encouraging. So today's video, you hear good things taking place. Every one of these things are because we're giving the time to Trump to start making these things take place. Now, does that mean this administration is perfect? No. But what it does mean is this is the only administration that has absolutely worked for you. They're bringing the fact that your kids are being indoctrinated. They're talking about the fact of ceasefire. They're meeting with people that necessarily don't like us, like Qatar, who now have to come to the agreement table. They're literally telling you, this is what we're going to get out of your food system, so therefore your families can be healthy. These are good things. And then all of a sudden, trade partners like India, what we don't realize, India and China is our 2 biggest trade partners where we get pharmaceuticals and all things from Indo-Pacific. So now we've got one to the table, literally the second big economy in the area, the most populated place. And so I think it puts more pressure on China to make a deal. Pay attention to this story. Guess what? The water bottles that we have, because we started banning some of the situations going to China and we started tariffing, guess what? They can't make those water bottles, those cheap water bottles anymore. China was making those. What that should prove to you is even your water is not safe because we're having to literally send the trash stuff over to them for them to make the bottles to then send back to us. Do you think your water is actually safe in those bottles? So the more that we put pressure on them, the more that they're struggling. They're having to shut down plants in China. Now that India is to the table, I think you're going to see China fold very, very soon. Pay attention to these stories, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and check out the vlog because we'll talk a lot more about this place in the coming days. Thank you guys for watching. God bless.